Oh, really?
Yeah, what's his
Yeah,
name?
Gordon.
Do you know him,
Yeah,
Tristan?
going.
Yeah. So I don't know where he's at on that,
Oh, that's great.
or whether he wants to do a Black Island route in the air as well as on the ocean.
Somehow my level of comfort is way down here. He's just a new pilot.
Well, I guess that's the nice thing.
I didn't have you at snack stand.
That's the good news about about New England Airlines, is at least all those pilots are,
Right?
been, yeah, super
yeah.
seasoned.
Yeah,
It's about the only
you're
thing
like,
that's
their butt
stable
is
in the whole
imprinted in the
place.
seat in the front.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's no side wind that's gonna catch them unaware.
Do you anticipate going into closed session for the first item?
That's up to Nick.
Okay. We set it up. If
I would say, based on my conversation with him, that more than likely, but.
Yeah, that's as I understand it as well.
I don't mean it's up to Nick. I mean, I'd like to hear what Nick has to say.
And I'm not sure we really have to, but we'll see.
Yeah.
So we got our Zoom equipment up and weren't running this afternoon, which is nice. We scrambled with it for a while
Oh,
this
really?
morning. Yeah, and didn't have any luck, but
Oh, really?
yeah, it's it was actually some kind of a disconnect. We had to get the company, the installing company, but they have a computer within the whole rack. So they can basically pinpoint exactly what's working and what's not working, and they can troubleshoot from there. So it was,
Cool.
yeah, it was very
When
cool.
did we have the temerity?
Oh, did you get it?
21st?
Yeah, I know, not bad, huh? It's not instantaneous, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, let me know if you need more.
I think I told Tristan, I don't know if I took it, I don't know if I told you guys the story, but we got one of those electric zero turn mowers.
Yeah.
The thing is fabulous, but there was something wrong with it. I called the guy, which is in North Carolina. He said, what's the serial number on your mower? I read it to him. And they could connect remotely.
Oh, is it like
Wow.
a smart?
It's a smart mower.
Smart zero radio. Wow.
Isn't that crazy? And they said, oh, you need some part.
That they were probably happy to sell them and send
No,
them.
they can't.
Nice.
It's just, but they wanted me to bring it over together to Cat's Power. And I said, look, the logistics of that for us, and they said, okay. That's fine, we'll waive that requirement, but we'll assign you an engineer. So basically, I got the part, your thing inside it that said, call Misty Dodge when you. Yes, the engineer got on the phone with me, said, take these screws out, blah, 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 blah.
Cool.
But it's also a little creepy. Like you got this shit with a lawnmower.
When Chad was explaining the water
"Oh,
company
keep mowing it."
meters to me, like when you first started there, and I'm like, he's like, yeah, we just drive around the truck with the antenna on top, and now they don't even do that. But in the beginning, I was like, and so I thought that was like brilliant.
Brilliant figure. Like when you look at a water usage chart, you can tell a lot about some households.
He's the first year there, that's what he said to me. He's like, well, somebody gets up at 3 o'clock in the morning and flushes a toilet and takes a shower. Or at least uses as much water as one person would take to flush a toilet and take a
Wow.
shower at 3 o'clock in the morning in the middle of the winter. And I'm like, how weird that, yeah. Yeah, he's like,
Yeah, the water company.
yeah.
Yeah, all the, oh.
But he was like, you can totally extrapolate, if you wanted to, you could extrapolate like how much water people. But I remember when we first bought our house and it had a cesspool, it didn't have a septic. And so we had to be like crazy careful about the water usage, and so we were on a schedule of opposite day showers. And then the kids could take a bath, but I would only put an inch of water in the bathtub. That was it.
And that was it for all, and you just rotate all the kids through.
It was just the two of them, but they were in there together and
No, I
like,
get
you know,
that.
with their 1 inch of water. But then when we would go to a hotel on the mainland, I'd be like, we're doing the big tub, you know, like fill it up. I would buy bath toys. I would bring soap. I would bring like, and they would spend like an hour and a half in the bathtub at the
Oh,
hotel.
yeah.
Like it was the whole reason to go. And because we were like so deprived at home. 1 inch of bath water, so that we wouldn't overflow the whole backyard. It was crazy. But when we got the new septic put in, it's like, again, it's like one of those with the pump and the meter, you know, like. And our alarm was going off all the time, and I kept calling David down, and I'm like, why? And he was like, you guys aren't using enough water. If we didn't have a washing machine. He's like, I don't know what to tell you, just turn on the sink and let it run for like 20 minutes. Whenever you're in the kitchen. And then, or switch your shower schedule early. Yeah, because we weren't running enough water through that system to make it function properly. So the alarm goes off if there's too much water, and the alarm goes off if there's not enough water.
All those years of conserving.
Yes, all those years of conserving were not. And the really bad thing is like my hearing is not so bad, the high pitch.
Remind me to tell you.
alarm.
Conversation.
Well, and actually, like Marty Milner, it's like banging on my back door and saying, it's like, do you hear that? And I'm like, what? And he was like, I don't hear the alarm. I didn't hear the alarm. And it's sort of all, so like all the way down the road, we could hear it. Yeah. How's it going?
Uh,
How did it go?
Keith, ready when you are.
Huh? So.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Sorry for the start time. Today is Thursday, December 5th, 2024. It's 3 p.m. Call this meeting of the Charlotte Town Council. Our first item is a discussion with our solicitors. A number of questions came up, and a number of this is regarding a moped license application. We had asked them to do a bit of research. Nick, are you here?
I am, Keith. Good afternoon. How is everybody?
Good.
Also have James with us this afternoon.
We don't see either.
Just for the record, everybody, and I apologize to interrupt. This is Josh Parks, the attorney for Miles. I'm on as well right now. I know you want to go into executive session, so mechanically, if you want to shove me in a meeting room, or I can just sign off and just someone wants to call me when I should sign back on again, whatever works for you.
I'm not sure we are. I think all five of us wanted to hear from James and Nick regarding whether we should go into closed session today.
Yeah, Keith, I'm happy to jump in. I've talked to a couple of you about questions you have, legal questions. I also received a message today through the town manager from Nancy. And Nancy, I appreciate you reaching out, saying that a number of your questions were answered by the documents provided by Mr. Parks, who, in my opinion, did a good job outlining the landscape. So unless there's a pressing question or a concern by the council that you think should be an executive session, without knowing, the council may be inclined to proceed with the matter today, but I'll leave that up to the council.
Well, others feel, I don't feel especially compelled, particularly given that all of the questions we talked about in open session, and you know, I could have a pretty good sense of. Does anybody disagree with that?
No.
I agree, I prefer to be in open session, particularly with the information I was provided.
Yeah. So anyway, Nick, do you want to give us any kind of briefing, or shall we move on to item number 2?
I think you can move on. If I sense any speed bumps in the process, I'm ready to jump in. The past couple of days have been a good reminder. It served as a good reminder for James and myself as we look through many years of history, including litigation of the moped matters, but it's been clear to us, and I think is outlined in the papers that you received, clear that we can proceed today, but I won't hesitate to jump in as you continue with this application.
Perfect, thank you. So item number 2, we have a continued item to discuss and act on the renewal of a moped license for Miles Unlimited Inc. Is there any discussion of that matter? Go ahead, Nancy.
I think at the end of the meeting last week, or beginning of whatever it was, Bill, you had outlined with Jonathan what the procedure was gonna be, and I'd like to just verify that. And then proceed for a motion based on that.
And you're referring to the procedure as far as people renting and where they
Right.
go on the property.
So how is that gonna work?
Do you wanna just reiterate it?
Yeah, so, Jonathan, as I understood, just for the record, that, Miles is operating on lot
111?
111. So people that rent a moped, you know, it said they go there, they fill out the paperwork. And the transaction is done there, it hadn't been done online, is done there, and the only thing off the property was the, where they would do the proficiency training over on the other side. I took a ride by also, and there is the sign that says Miles Unlimited, and there is I saw the booth that he was referring to, the door, that is there, so. Is that still accurate as to your, operation?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
All are used for all this stuff. That's the most important thing, because it ends up being, falling into your lap. Are there any other questions? No. A motion would be in order for the rent for, sorry. I was looking at the wrong pocket. A motion in order to grant license for the rent to Miles Unlimited for the rental of up to 34 mopeds at Class 6 Lot 111. Pending receipt of registration numbers as issued by the state of Rhode Island, vehicle identification numbers as issued by the manufacturer of each vehicle, and in accordance with the ordinances of the town of New Shoreham, for such license to expire December 31st, 2025. Any lease agreement between a moped renter and the licensee shall include hours of operation, safety features, information regarding operation on unimproved roads, and the following language. The horn on the vehicle is a piece of equipment designed for emergency use and should be used only in this fashion, end quote. That motion?
So,
Second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. You guys have it.
and can I just add, Jonathan, I appreciated the memorandum with Josh, I guess. Yeah. The memorandum that you put together, it was a good refresher course on the history. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you didn't feel too buried in paper.
I was joking with Tristan. I said, I have a question about item B on page 36. Are you prepared? Thank you, John.
Great. Take care, everybody. Have a good day.
How long? All right, next matter. Brainstorm and discuss town council priorities for the upcoming. Just very briefly, I just thought it would be worthwhile at a work session to just have a conversation about what those priorities are. It helps me, I know it helps Amy, to make, and it helps Millie, because Millie and the clerks, and a life-saving thing for me, keep track of things that we haven't put on each other. And say, Keith, we have to include this. So I don't know if anybody would like to start with their thoughts on things they'd like to work on.
I think, ideally, I'd love to hear what the priorities were last year. So that we can either pick up from there or move on to something else.
I think that is a great idea. I don't have them. You know, as you know, Nancy, far better than I. Things come up, the things you think you're going to be working on and the things you end up working on. Sometimes are quite different, based upon, you know, frankly, the emergency of the day or the week or the month. You did have a year of rather significant, transition, I would say. So it was a good time. I put together, a bit of a list, things that I've been thinking about. They're not in particular order, other than the first, is something that's gonna require, I think, a lot of work by all of us and by our representatives in Providence, et cetera, and that is doing the next stage of creating an appropriate and more refined property tax system that better reflects consumption and town services. I would say. It's something that we've been working on now for 5 years, I think. Is that about right? 4 years?
4 years.
Yeah. Culminated in the passage of legislation 2 years ago, resulted in the passage of the homestead exemption last year. And I think you know, Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, Molly or Tristan, because you guys were here as well. I think there was a consensus around the homestead exemption is good and worthwhile, but is a bit of a blunt instrument. I guess I would describe it as. And I know that Amy has done a lot of thinking on this. So anyway, that's. I don't need to get into the great, you know, I don't think we need to get into the details, but I think working on that is important. Mom,
I had that on my list about, I think the next step that we wanted to move on, but we need to have legislation first is, right now, we've provided a homestead exemption to people who live in their home year-round on the island, but we wanted to extend it to someone who provides year-round housing. So if you are the owner of a building and you rent it year-round, we want to find a mechanism to extend it so that we can reinforce our year-round housing in that manner, right? Is that, to me, that's the next step, but there may be other places to go first.
yes.
Were you referring to also like a commercial tax and a residential tax, that type of thing, or?
Potentially.
Yeah, so, but that would take legislation also, right?
That aspect actually would not require additional legislation. But you would treat it as part of a package that we worked out together. You wouldn't just move one piece.
So what sets the difference between any legislation, like is under?
Sure, and we won't go deep into it, but we have the authority to do a homestead. We have the authority to do differential tax rates between residential and commercial. This next step that the council previously had been considering was extending that to, as Molly said, year-round residents who are not owner occupants. And that can take a couple different forms, but our current legislation does not extend that far. So we need specific language for
So
that.
defines out exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this, but there's the great example is Block Island Grove Street. Where it's a commercial property, but I'm correct here, right?
Mhm.
Where the grocery store provides year-round housing to a number of people. But the property is taxed at a commercial rate, and we can't differentiate that under the current statutory regime. And, you know, they want,
No, I get the concept, I just don't, but it's really gonna take, you wanna go to the well once, so we really need to hash it out.
Yes.
What changes.
Yeah, right, exactly. Molly, do you have anything you want to talk about? I don't know.
On that same
Just
topic. or-
generally,
Well, I think in general that something we've been talking about all the way along is looking at noise, outdoor entertainment licenses, if we would want to make a change in what we have. I would also say like looking at ordinances. We seem to run into more often than I would have thought or realized instances in which our ordinances haven't kept up with
Mhm.
what we wanna do and like, but how do we? Rewriting some ordinances to sort of shore up what our intent really is now in present day.
Right.
Fire department, supporting the fire department building.
Cause I didn't, that's a really good one, I'll occasionally talk to Nick or, talk to Amy or talk to someone. They start Karen, especially Karen Browning, the lady solicitor, who's like, will say, but you don't have an ordinance that says that. And I think it would be worthwhile, I guess I'm looking at Millie, at some point in the not too distant future, maybe on one of the work session agendas to have Karen, Nick, James, Amy, others, if they've seen something as they've been going through, or if they've seen something that perhaps other towns caught in their old ordinances, or that sort of thing, so that, I mean, it's not gonna be perfect, it's never gonna be perfect, the ordinances and laws evolve and change, that's why the legislature's in session every year, right? But having that brainstorming kind of conversation, I think would be really helpful. Go ahead.
I just add, after listening to, no,
Yeah, you.
after listening to Karen at the zoning board meetings and all the changes in the zoning ordinances. We have some specific instances that we really should decide to approach the legislature on getting away from this one size fits all mentality that's up there, because we're gonna have some problems along the line.
100%. Absolutely. Molly, any others? Better, you want to-
No, I mean, there's nothing specific. Right now, I also don't have a list from last year that is handy. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure
I don't even know if we engaged in this exercise last year.
we did it 2 years ago.
We did it 2 years ago. Have other issues.
I think there are some things that are some immediate things that are gonna be coming to this table. One of them is some sort of a policy on the house availability for everyone. We're gonna have the Thomas house, we're gonna have the house behind the Thomas house, we're gonna have the manager's house.
But that's you.
Yeah, we expect an update in December with a more formal policy in January. For you to think about, digest and tweak, at least as a starting point.
And I think if we do have, I think it would be helpful, if only with James and Nick. To get a list of all the current litigation, where we are with things.
I think at our next meeting, we should have a session where James and Nick present some of those.
That'd be helpful.
Actually, we've been talking with them to schedule something, and we're asked to wait until January, so I think the January work session will include us.
Great.
Wonderful.
I think when we did this exercise a couple years ago, we did it right after we had the updates from all the department heads, and that seemed
Oh,
to
that's true.
create a situation where things were percolating to the
Mm-hmm.
top of like, priorities that they had that we really had to enable. And I think that we'll have more to add to this list after we hear from our department heads, including you two. You know, like I'm sure you guys have things that you would love for us to address, or other department heads, so.
So there's something that has been sticking with me since I was first elected to the council. That is, this involves deer. I'm sorry, but I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I feel like we don't focus on deer until it's time to set the deer dates, and then we're kind of doing a little bit of harem scarum as if the hunting dates are the policy decision. And I would argue we have to,
Yes,
in my opinion, we have to sort of strap on our helmets and show some leadership on deer issues, because I'm maybe a latecomer or a master of the obvious, but this is really a public health issue. It's not just about hunting. You know, it's about, my opinion, it's about figuring out safe and sane ways to whether the word is harvest or, you know, whatever the right word is, and we have the best possible advisor here in the room with us today, but I just I feel like every time I just feel like whenever we sort of say, yeah, deer, and then we get to setting the deer dates, and we're kind of doing a little bit of picking, choosing, you know, well, could we do a set? Oh, we can't do a Saturday. Oh, should we like, oh, we can't do that, you know, and then we just set the dates. And then it's kind of another 12 months, and
yeah,
so anyway,
I honestly can't believe I forgot to put that on my list. I literally every single day ask hunters how many deer they've killed. And I'm, so but we definitely need to put this on our list, and we discussed this a lot at the candidates forum that Byra had. And I've had so many people come up and talk to me about this topic since that forum. And I had one community member who sent me a very interesting piece, because certainly it's a health issue with the Lyme disease and ehrlichiosis and babesiosis and the tick-borne meat allergy, the Lone Star thing that so many people we know have.
I'm not giving up cheeseburgers for ticks.
You may have to. But I also think, like, all kidding aside, that if you've lived here long enough, we all know someone who has died of complications from Lyme. And so that is one problem, but the other problem is the thing that he sent me the information about was more about species elimination, and not animals, but plants. Right, because I said something about them eating my dahlias, which I'm none too happy about, by the way, but his point was they're eliminating all these other species of plants on the island, and so then they will just keep doing that. They will keep eliminating species, right? So it's not just, it is a little anecdotal when people say, oh, I don't get my daffodils anymore because the deer never used to eat yellow flowers and now they eat all the daffodils, right? But it's real. It's not anecdotal, right? Like this year they ate marigolds. In the past, that was a safe plant to plant. You know, they didn't eat marigolds. Supposedly they don't eat dahlias, but I have evidence to the contrary. So you know, like it's they're gonna keep eliminating species of vegetation until we have nothing but mile a minute buying here, and then maybe they'll leave that. So that's a problem. Well, we've saved a lot, we've saved half of our property on our island, and now the deer are going to destroy that. So it's a separate problem from the medical. I think it's worth discussing.
I think that, some of the people that made, the deer issues have been around forever.
I know,
The people that made great headway, going back to Bob Burek, Bill Wilson, even Ruth Profigo and that group, but all of them, I'm talking ones that really made headway, came into obstacles with DEM, because remember, they're about deer management. And so I think we need to look at, and, you know, speak to the hunters and so forth, and, you know, when we find out, where the obstacles are with the regulations that the state has, that's really kind of tying our hands a little bit. We're referring back to the hunting because it's a means, but whether it was Molly said, whether it's the salt licks, if there's other ways to do that. Once we got there, we had the problems because of the state regulations. So when we're talking about meeting with the state and looking at those, I think we have to put that in the front instead of dealing with it when we get to the end side.
100%. We were, Amy and I had a meeting with Terry Gray. I can't even remember what the reason was for it. Probably 8 weeks ago, would be my bet. And probably, at the end of the meeting, we said, look, we need to have a real conversation about deer that, you know, recognizes from our perspective, sort of the public health issues, et cetera. He could not have been more welcoming of that conversation. So I think you hit it, I think you hit it right on the head. We gotta talk to him. And there's always been a bit of a chicken and egg, but I think we should do our best to include them in our conversations. But he was, as he is on, I think everything since he's been, he's been very open to, how do we describe it, block island solutions for block island, because we are, you know, as Nancy was pointing, we are square pegs on nearly everything, so.
Amy, how much money do we have in the deer fund, and how much do people get for a tail?
So it's 150, Paul's gonna correct me if I'm wrong, for a tail, 1250 is the tag reimbursement. Off the top of my head, I think our funding for this year was between 20 and 30,000. We did exhaust all of our funding last year. So hopefully we'll be in the same boat again this year.
So if we have 30,000 and the tail's 150. That's only 200 deer. So I think we already need more money in that fund.
If that's the path we're gonna continue, yeah. It is not reimbursing for all of the tails that are collected.
Right. Which,
We did have contributions from BIRA, if you remember last year,
Right.
to increase that amount, and the council voted to use some contingency funds to increase that funding as well.
But we're also gonna have to identify how many deer do we need to have taken
Yes.
in order to where we maintain, where we fall ahead or back, otherwise. It's not a plan, you know, it's an attack.
Yeah,
So-
and Joe Loya, I don't know whether he sent it to everybody, but he sent me an update of a piece of research that they've been doing specifically on that, like having it be a multi-year long, because it's not the kind of thing where you're gonna, you know, solve it in 1 month or in just one hunting season. That was my.
If people get concerned about the eradication to control, you know, I think, let's get down to where that's even, you know, we're getting close to that, we can make that decision. But until then, everyone's on the same page, and how do we do it safely?
Yes.
And is there some way, I was gonna say, we used to, Chris, remember when we had a snowstorm? We had the arrangements already made to get up there and at least do a count in the snow. I mean, is that something that we still, Paul, that's the question for you.
If only we knew a helicopter.
And that's something that, and again, that's a conversation with DEM. DEM used to do these flyovers often. We haven't had one done in a long time.
Yeah.
And those way. You can't judge where you are if you don't know what your baseline is.
Right.
You don't know where you're starting. Yeah. If you have 400 here. Right, and half of them are females. Last year, at the end of the year, when you get into late January, February, they're starting to form little ones inside. One. I don't know, I want to say probably 40 plus that are kind of opposite in the fall. Didn't have any. All the rest of them had twins. All of them had twins, some had triplets. So, and that's part of it, we do need to figure out where we are baseline to start with. And then figure out how do we get, how many do we need to remove and actually gain some ground. Right. Because right now, we're barely treading water. Right.
Do you know how many were taken last year?
Oh, no, I believe it was 300 and change, 347 maybe off the top of my head.
And still, like when I leave a meeting here at dusk and drive a mile and a half, I can see 9 or 10 from my car.
And I mean, there's a part of me that says, rather than bring DEM in late, let's start with DEM.
Yeah.
And sit down with them, because they have always put up the barricades with no weekend hunting and no life, and they were gonna promise everything, and and we've had some very, obstinate DEM personnel along the way. Let's try to get them in here and sit down.
Yes,
That's part of the solution.
I think it's essential.
We used to have the meetings at the school, there had to be 100 people at the meeting, I mean.
I was just about to joke, but, how do you eat up half an hour of the meeting? Say the word deer.
But maybe we should have a meeting about deer, because I mean, I very much feel like eliminating the deer or seriously reducing the deer herd is a possibility. It really is just how much people can stomach as far as like how it's gonna be done, right? So on Nantucket, they closed whole areas of the island, and they pretty much said to everybody, like, we're shooting
Yeah,
for these 4 days in this area, and if you don't like it, you go away,
yeah,
you go away. So we may have to, like, but what I'm saying is, like, if people are like, nope, I don't want that, like, it's really just how much people can handle as far as like how we decide to proceed.
well,
Yeah, I just have a comment, conversation is really interesting.
you have to come up with a microphone, man, sorry.
I just had a quick comment, did some quick calculations.
Is that green button on there?
Yeah, it's green. Oh, now it's bright green. And $30,000 a year, expense at a 5.5% interest rate, 30 years, gives you a present value of $436,000 to do some kind of deer eradication program. So by spending $30,000 a year, you're having doubles and triplets, you're kind of falling behind the 8 ball. So if we're gonna spend that much money a year, maybe it would be a good idea to take out a bond, come up with an eradication program, and instead of spending the $30,000 a year on losing proposition, just pay the $30,000 to pay off the bond and eradicate that.
Good thought. So I guess it's safe to say that we don't want to talk about deer. This is one that I have that I don't have any great ideas, but it occurred to me as I was thinking about this meeting. I think everybody has a similar experience. It is amazing to me how many of the texts, emails, conversations that are concerns or complaints are related in some way to vehicles. You know what I mean? It's whether it, and this is not a moped conversation, it's bicycles, number of cars, Paul, I remember you and I were speaking at, I can remember where you and I were speaking together, and you said, something that I remember, which is we have all of this traffic on roads that were designed for a horse and buggy and haven't been improved since that time or expanded since that time. Parking, blah, blah, you know, sort of all any range of things. And I think it would be worthwhile. It's not like we're gonna wave a magic wand. Actually, Neil Murphy did a lot of work on parking, for example. But I do think it would be worthwhile to regularly find things that we can pick off. You know, and I personally, I think we've gotta figure out whether the townspeople want paid parking in the summertime on some basis. They can now be actually quite discreet and credit card based, so it's not, you know, it's not a you know, what I remember, you know, for most of my life, you know, which is putting quarters in, you know, now it's all electronic. It's not that you can turn them off on Labor Day, you can turn them on Memorial Day. I think it's something that's worth talking about. And frankly, it offers a way to kind of start to generate some non-tax revenue. That is basically a user fee. If you want to come into town and park, it's X dollars an hour, and you do it in nearly every other place you go to. So, you know, didn't intend to raise, you have a residence pass and charge for parking at Town Beach. Yeah, I'm not saying that that's something that I want to do, but if we're gonna, you know, so many of our complaints are around cars, vehicles, you know, whatever you call it, not even just motor vehicles. What are the things we can do to manage that, and what are the things, quite frankly, we can do to monetize? It's not like anybody's gonna stop, whatever, bringing their Suburban over on the ferry for their 2-week vacation, right? And I'm not trying to do that. So anyway, I think whether it's via the new committee that we set up or you know, on our agenda, I think a conversation generally about vehicles, and you know, looking to you, Paul, you know, to the extent that you have any thoughts about this, things that drive you crazy, things that you say, why don't we just, well, you know, it's free to talk about.
So that's an idea, and when people complain about the parking, I lately have taken the saying to them, well, there is a solution, which is paid parking. And for some people, they're like, interesting, and other people, like, it sets their hair on fire, and I'm like, well, you know, again, like, it's as much as people can stomach, right? Like you want a solution, but what do you want the solution to be, right?
Yeah.
If paid parking is a legit solution to parking. And it would create a situation where people would take one car instead of 3 to go get ice cream cones, right? So then you have less of it, or somebody who's working downtown all day probably wouldn't pay to park their car downtown all day. They would get a ride to work and get a ride home.
Yeah.
They figure out some other way.
Right.
It might just be that little threshold that you need to, like, push people to being a little more creative rather than parking downtown all day. I think have said before, another way would be to require employees to move their employers to move their employees. So if you have employees, you pay to get them there and get them out, so that you don't have 45 people bringing a car downtown to work at your hotel or whatever it is. Beach parking seems to be the threshold at which, so people are willing to stomach the idea of downtown parking. In my conversations I've had, but beach parking really is like a bridge too far for a lot of people.
For even bringing it up, I'm purchasing a flak jacket.
Oh, yeah, I can, yeah.
That becomes a cultural issue.
It does, it's totally a cultural issue.
Well, it's also a financial issue, because when it was looked at like 10 years ago, the cost of maintaining it, having someone to collect the money, you know, and monitor the whole thing. You know, it became almost a losing proposition at the time. The other part of it is the paid parking down, don't we have 2-hour parking downtown? Don't we have 2-hour parking downtown? Yeah, so we're not supposed to have people sitting, you know, parking their car all day long, going to work. I'm not sure paid parking solves anything, because there's still a limited amount of parking. If anything, it might bring in a whole lot more scooters and electric bikes to the downtown area, you know, as an unintended consequence.
Right,
So-
but they also would need to pay for parking if they're in a parking space. So, and just to say, like, it's a different, parking is different now, like, if you go to beach communities where they have paid parking now, it's just like Keith said, there's no person checking on this, except in the fining end of it. You know, there's a street sign that you can scan the QR code, download the app, or you already have the app. You pay by credit card on the app. The person who's coming through to check that you've paid, they're on the app, they know that your car was only paid for, you know, an hour. They give you a ticket. It's all electronic. So it's, aside from the person who's gonna be issuing the ticket, there is no person collecting money. There's no exchange of funds other than electronically. At least the places I've been.
Well, it's worth talking about, right? Yeah. Paul?
Keith, if I could borrow your helmet, black jacket. I really think, this topic, we should consider bike paths and some type of available public transportation. Because people bringing 3 cars out here to rent a house, you know, if I was able, maybe they don't bring one, to give you an example.
I agree with you, I'll talk about, this special edition Kevlar, but some manner of shuttle, I think we have got. We, you know, enough already. Reasonable people, I think, can figure out, a way to, help the police and merchants, et cetera, move people off of Water Street who are, you know, kind of wandering a bit. So I mean, my opinion, we ought to get a used school bus and shuttle people from Water Street to Town Beach. If that's the first step of it, that's fine. I'm not talking about needing a comprehensive transportation plan that replaces all other modes of transportation. But on certain peak days, I think it would be worthwhile to have something that moves people to the beach.
The other topic that I hear quite a bit about, and I'm sure you guys do too, is a community center. So I mean, I hear a lot of people who want a community center. I think it's something that requires a committee of interested people to do the research on, to bring a proposal forward. I guess more than anything, I want to make it clear that I don't think that's the job of the town council to come up with the proposal and find a location and decide on funding. I think if people are interested, I certainly would be okay with like creating the council creating a committee to look into a proposal. So there's that.
I also, I am on my list, really embracing and working on the school board's role, but you know, what does the school look like in the future? And I know Amy, you've been working on this and communicating with school committee members and the building committee and the education planner, et cetera. But to me, I think that's, it's important when we're considering, sort of, what are we gonna do at the school? To have important aspects of it that are, how will the community be able to use it? And how do we, you know, if there's gonna be a significant renovation, for example, or new construction of any of it, I think it ought to contemplate using that as an essential community anchor, not just for school students, but for the community. That's, I think, yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
I feel like I'm sitting here as Debbie Downer. When you go back to priorities.
This is why we talk about this stuff.
You've got, you know, we have property over at Champlain's that is supposed to be something for the harbors, that's gonna cost a lot of money. You're talking about the school, we're talking about a community center. We're talking about a period of time where we have a large payment on a debt for our broadband that we all accepted and we all anticipated was gonna lock us in for a period of time. You know, so, yeah, I just don't want people to build up their expectations that if we're talking about these things, they're gonna.
All right, David. No, you're right. I mean, so much of this stuff is, I think, raises Amy's blood pressure because of all that. There's a public safety building too.
Right.
You know, so, you know, there's a lot, but, to me, the sort of thematically, it's about what's the community want? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and some stuff you can afford, some stuff you can't afford, and you gotta be disciplined about that. But when it comes to the school and community center stuff, we're clearly gonna have to figure out, what does the community want out of the school? What does it look like? What, you know, how do we invest that? And as we try to do with every other project, like, how can we make that work for more than one thing? You know,
So
too small not to be doing that part of it.
on that topic, I'm gonna beat the same old drum that I beat every year, which is
I think the school
the
committee,
school committee needs to they need to broadcast their meetings.
Sure.
Like, there's just, right, are they going to?
Yes, so there, you'll be meeting with the school committee on the 16th, and that will be here at Town Hall. And going into the future, they're going to try to be have their meetings here at Town Hall.
I think that's great. I think that's great. I think, I don't know about you guys, but I'm made aware daily, how many people are watching our meetings. I worked at school today, at least 6 people talked to me about the stone wall. And so that's great.
yeah,
That's great. So when you look on YouTube and you see that over 100 people have watched a meeting, which is great.
yes,
If there were 100 people in this room right now, I'd be hyperventilating, but it feels less threatening when they watch it at home and talk to you about it the next day. I think it's terrific because people feel involved, because they know what's going on, and I think the school that's our biggest budget line, and people need to know what's going on, particularly if they want to make changes and come up with a new building.
Can I just toss in though, ironically, you were on the charter commission and you were on the charter commission and the charter exempted the school department from doing that. Was there some reason? Did they push back then or?
I am going to say that the majority of the changes that I wanted in the charter did not get pushed forward by the council.
yes, indeed.
It was terribly frustrating.
I should have learned my lesson.
I have two areas. One, I agree with you, Keith, about the school. I think when it could be multi, there's a benefit. We used to have the basketball league up there and they've done the volleyball. And that's a win-win, you know, when the building's there and a lot of our tax dollars go to it. So I think when the community can use it, I think it's a win for everybody to do that. One of the things I think we need to keep on the front burner is the Coast Guard station. You know, it seems like we've been reactive as opposed to proactive. And I know it's, and I know for the, you know, for Amy and say, it's a big hurdle, it takes money. But, you know, when we hear things about, you know, the paint and so forth, I think we need to focus on, we'll walk before we run. And I think we need to take a look at what we have and get that up to speed. And that's a big hurdle, and that's, you know, but I think it's something we need to be supportive of from, on the other side.
As long as the new buildings, we should probably prioritize the buildings that we have.
And we should be looking at, you know, a 5-year, 10-year plan with the building, so, you know, how we're gonna use them. You know, or we at least hope to use them from that end of it, you know. You know, it's, I think it's great, we're requiring all these properties, but we really need to have, we all know, you know, if you take care of something in your house, you prevent future problems, and we need to be proactive on it. And I think with, you know, Mike and Tom, the position we have, I think that, you know, that's what we want to do, but I think we need just to work hard. You know.
Can we have, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think you're 100% right in, whatever 4 years I've been on the council, we probably have a moment where we tour the Coast Guard station, talk about what it needs, and then move on to something else. And every time I go and tour that place, it makes me more depressed. I don't know whether you've been in it lately, but it's, you know, I mean, it's old, it's, the reason I interrupted is, Amy, can we, put that on a future agenda and just, again, sort of like, Tom seems to have his finger on the pulse. I'd really love to get a sense, and I think the council would love to get a sense of kind of what are the bare bones baseline capital expenditures that you need to make sure that that place is going to stand, and then, you know, what are the, you know, what are the if we did this then that kind of things around the Coast Guard station.
I would also like that police station in the, we'll call it public safety center. Yeah, we included that because, you know, the plan that's out there is a beautiful plan, but is that really what we're after as an addition, or is that really the lot that we're going to use? Have we exhausted all potential lots? Absolutely.
And just on that, Tristan, I said, you know, if we don't have some sort of a master plan right now, can we at least deal with the fire department needs garage space?
Right.
So, you know, can we at least look at that and see what we can come up with to solve that problem, at least over the next year or two?
Particularly with that, with the new pumper that's been ordered. I mean, to leave that outside, to me, is, I think it was Molly, someone said, if I bought a new tractor or zero turn, I wouldn't leave that outside the yard, so I think we need to make that a priority as to what our options are. I have a few, but I think it'd be more appropriate when we have it scheduled for a meeting to talk about.
Maybe you were going to say something.
Just a follow-up question for clarification. Do you want that to come with a field trip or a discussion here at the table, or both?
I've seen it, but if others would like to do a walkthrough, I'd be happy to do it.
Yeah, there's a part of me that says, you know, we have been doing the bare bones, we've been keeping the structure up. Our problem has always been, we haven't decided what we want it to be.
Yeah.
So until we decide what we want it to be, we can't really come up with a, you know, with a dollar figure for what has to be done inside.
But we do need that dollar figure for when we're hearing that the paint's peeling and it's not habitable, blah, blah, blah. So those are the things that we need to immediately put the dollar figures for. You know, and that's what concerned me when there was a thought on that.
So I think over the last several years, I actually think Tom has kind of been more on top of this, but, in some of the work we're doing is because, one of the sides of the building, you could literally poke your finger through the wall from the outside in. You know what I mean? Like, even the basic stuff, has the can's been kicked down the road on that, and I know we're doing it now, but there's a lot still to do there. That's why, a tour might be worthwhile.
Also a list of what has been done over the past.
Sure.
Five,
Yep.
5 to 10 years, we did windows, we did a roof, I mean, it's been a while, but.
And this isn't meant to be critical of what has been done. This is, listen, it's an old building. It
Yes.
takes a lot of maintenance
Yeah.
and continuing maintenance program with it, and it needs that funding with it also. And-
But to Nancy's point, I mean, I've always been reluctant to sort of, to bite the bullet without a plan. So we have to, like, it needs what it needs, right? I'm not,
I think the staff would look forward to that conversation,
Great.
because we've talked about it a fair amount internally, and that's the point where we would also bring in Chief Dean and Kate and some of the other uses that are on that property, because it does serve multiple functions for the town.
let's do that at a time that works for everybody. So it's a back burner issue that should be more on the front burner, and I think it epitomizes some of the struggles we have as business when with.
But I think, so I think if you haven't seen the inside, which I had not until I went on a tour, absolutely, we should go on a tour. And the building facilities director and the harbor master should be there because they know what's been done recently. I think the other problem we have with buildings like this is our budget is our budget, and we can only raise it by 4% a year, right? And 4% really isn't very much, and 4% definitely doesn't cover renovating a really old building right on the water. So I don't think that it's off people's radar. I think it's that it has not been practical to do a renovation. And when you see it, I mean, we're using it, it's summer housing,
Necessary, so.
really interesting summer housing.
I'd like to do a tour, but I think what I'd like to see more, so it's not, hey, here's $200,000, go do what you can do. What I'd like to see is, hey, we're gonna take 50, 100, whatever it might be, and with that, we expect to replace X, Y, and Z. Now, there'll be some movement because Windows a little more, whatever it might be, but there's a defined number that represents the work that's gonna be done. Yeah.
And I think that's what's been happening, right?
I think we can put some more structure around it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's part of keeping the water out of it.
That's always job long. Amy, do you have anything that you wanted to raise? I need to put you on the spot.
That's okay. I think you've covered a lot of what was on my list that you might bring forward. I think is if we do a department head type meeting, you'll hear a different set of perspectives, which will be really helpful. Millie, did you want to add anything?
The only thing that
Rules and
that we've been talking about is and working on are some rules and procedures for the town council, and we were thinking that we'll be presenting those to you on the 18th of
Great.
December. Just a couple of additions that we think are very important.
I did have one for you, Millie. Or one that I wanted to talk to you about, which is, I actually think, one of the areas that we should continue or accelerate investment is in the sort of computerized electronics, based interaction with town government. I think the work that you and the clerks have done that has been transformative, and I think there's a lot more. My bet is that I shouldn't say I think, because this is so far outside my expertise, it's not even funny, but my sense is there's probably even more So I would, I think it might be worthwhile at some point, to the extent that it would be helpful to you, for you to perhaps talk about what the possibilities are, what kinds of investments we could make, where you get the bang for your buck, that sort of stuff, I think is really, really valuable.
Right. And just very briefly, I'm looking into an agenda management and kind of electronic packet, if you will, software that one of the issues is, though, is that we have a lot of boutique programs,
Yes.
and they require a lot of boutique training, and then also a lot of boutique, sometimes funding situations. So when they're coming back into, funding, and I'm talking even from the outside. So if, we're charging fees for different things here and there, they're coming into the town through all of these different programs, and it causes a lot of difficulty certainly for the finance department.
The back end.
Yeah, the back end. And then also then requires the department using it also has to do a lot of manipulation and stuff like that. These boutique programs are fantastic, and it's kind of what we need to do some of these really, precise things that only take place in one area of the town. They do come with a series of challenges.
So we have sort of one-offs for each different function, but not a comprehensive system. Is that
That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, OpenGov is one that does have a little more of a broad brush, because it covers, the land use, building, and now, the clerk's office. It still comes with its own set of complications. As far as I'm concerned, I don't find it a terribly easy program to work with, and it's also challenging, I think, from the finance
It's
side.
expensive, or
No,
It is medium expensive,
Okay.
but I would say you're more saying that it's challenging to work with and has some constraints that make it hard to
gotcha.
provide the user experience that we might want to provide.
Right.
And then having deployed a lot of these in the last 18 months, we are now definitely in a catch-up phase on that back end to make sure that, as Melanie said, the funding streams are tracked as carefully as we want them to be, and our information and data behind the scenes is as organized as you want them to be.
So
They're hard to deploy.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
and take
That's
longer
what I'm
than it
saying.
takes.
Yeah. It's hard to deploy.
Way too deep in just sorry. So how does it work? If we have a OpenGov for a building permit, my building permit is $1,000, and I put my credit card in on $1,000. Somehow it goes somewhere. Where does it go?
And that
That's-
documenting that flow and
That's the
making
hard
sure that we can identify it as a building permit all the way
Right.
through.
Gotcha.
It's not, the hard part is not getting it to the right line, it's getting it to the right line efficiently so that we can do that over and over as we scale transactions.
So you don't have to go back through and look at spreadsheets. and
Exactly.
receipts.
It's the automation so that we can keep our staffing levels the same when the volume, it has really increased.
Millie, is there anybody who's like the coin of the realm on this stuff, that a lot of municipalities are using to sort of? Not really.
No, I would say
What are
not.
you doing at that conference?
Like I said, there's a whole bunch of really great programs out there,
Yeah.
but they all tend to be pretty boutique and pretty specific to certain operations
Yeah.
and to certain departments, which, makes sense because
It's
we're
like
doing
there's
bunch of
tax
different things.
assess- Tax assessment program, there's a good property tax program, or there's a
Right.
good permitting program.
And
but-
there's a good
Right.
rec program and there's
Yeah.
a specialized harbors program and getting that to flow in a way that
Interesting,
works as well as
That's
it should in theory.
yeah.
Is where we are now. So we're not saying we're not gonna do more,
Right.
but it can sometimes not be as clear to the outside world that those take a lot to manage, and we're
Right.
probably not ready to bite off a few more quite yet. We have a little more digestion of the
Yeah,
one we've got.
Absolutely.
So to go back to OpenGov, I might have this wrong. I mean, we're pretty much using that's building permits, that's liquor licenses,
So, yeah, it's all,
dog licenses.
it's all of our licenses and permits through the clerk's office, except for the marriage license, except for vital records. It's short-term rental through the land use department, and it's all of the building department permits.
So, I think something that's coming down the pipe, probably from the state side, is a requirement that land use planning and zoning applications also then have an electronic platform. I don't know that they've decided that it's
Yeah.
open gov, but it may
It makes
very well
sense
be.
that it, because they're.
You may be required to switch to a different.
Well, the good thing is we know it's funded.
Yeah, so that's probably one of the next major steps is the planning and zoning applications will come online as well.
Right. Great, anybody else?
How, is there, how about the training of the staff too? Is that kind of a problematic?
I mean, it's just, I can't say problematic, it's just a heavy lift.
Yeah.
It's a heavy lift for the user who, or the person who's kind of trying to implement and then to do the training, because most of the training is done locally, although there are videos and stuff like that. It really usually means hands-on. So, we will work with each individual department to get things up and running. And so, yeah, it takes a lot of time, energy, capital.
This is probably, maybe it might be an incorrect assumption, but I happened to be in town hall, walking into the clerk's office one day, one day this week. And Laurel looked like she was about to pull her hair out. My sense is she was working on the computer program having to do with some of the permits that we had granted.
That's true.
So it's,
Yeah.
for all of its.
Yeah, we were
promise.
working on it together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah. Great. Anything else? Cindy?
Thank you. I appreciate the fact that that noise came out.
Yes.
Thank you. I just hope that we really get going on it, and there's many of us that are working on it on the sidebar. That we can maybe present ideas, but I mean, if it just doesn't get to the point where we're in the middle of the season. I think.
Absolutely, that was, if Molly hadn't raised it, I was going to say.
Good, thank you,
Yeah.
appreciate it, that came up, it's, people are really concerned about it and want something done, so.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Susan.
If there's anything we can do, to mesh, together. Thanks.
Can I just ask, you mentioned that you and Amy had a meeting about parking lots.
Yes, Amy?
Sure, and DEM is very receptive, and Human Services has been putting together an application and a draft policy for the council to review. So you will see that in short order, and this is for a targeted number of spaces for those people who may have to go off for particularly an emergency medical situation, or need to be able to get their car back into a space, say during the summer when Lot G might be full. So we're proposing a few different categories of placards for the spaces that DEM has proposed allocating to the town for these uses. Some long-term for those who might have a long-term medical need, and some short-term for a one-off type of appointment. But that'll
How many
come before the
spaces
council.
have they allocated for it?
Provisionally, again, we're not totally done, but they're talking about 22.
This is for the stories that we all read about, anything like that. In the summertime, I'll give, it's clearly, my daughter clearly probably picked me, she heard me use this anecdote, but so, they have a baby, she and Scott have a baby this summer. They have a car in the state lot. She does not schedule pediatrician visits on particular days because she can't be sure she can get her car back. And there's, it's not just, it's sort of every range of that. And, if you're her or if you're, a couple who has, doesn't have a place to stay in the mainland. You can't get into Lot G, you got a problem. So, Terry Gray, the head of DEM, I thought, maybe, I thought could not have been more helpful and supportive of the idea of doing something.
They were very supportive and have been working with us. And like I said, it'll come to the council as a full draft policy. But they've also been very open to other conversations, you know, about unique situations on Rock Island and relative to parking. And obviously they're doing a lot of improvements to the lot. And so communicating back and forth about clearing certain lanes so that work can be done. It's been a very open dialogue with DEM and Dan Costa and the team over there, which has been great.
I think it's wonderful if you have a set amount of spaces. I think that we have to, from someone who has dealt with parking on this side and on the other side. I think that, like when we made the 8 spots for the seniors and turns out we have 80 seniors, I just think we really need to, think this through as to how it's going to be implemented and followed from the other end of it. So we don't have something that's been very successful in obtaining backfire in the point, from that end of it. So
One of the many smart things that Amy is doing is doing this, she's put it on Allison Carlin's desk. So that it's really a human services function. But primarily, so that it's not, hey, I'm 65, I want one of those. I want one of those special spots.
I think we really need to be involved in how this comes down, because I think that it's there's a lot more moving parts. And I only say this because I deal with it,
Yes.
and there's a lot more moving parts to it. I think it's wonderful. I think it can work out, but I think it has to be really thought out to the second and third order as to, accountability, how it works from that end. So good job on the efforts that you made on it. So I want the backfire.
I'm just gonna take this opportunity to say that Human Services Department is like one of the best things that we've ever added. I think it's terrific for the people that are being serviced by that department in the last 2 years. It's tremendous with the Meals on Wheels and everything else. But I think they definitely have an understanding of like, right, that this is more for like people going off for physical therapy or dialysis or, chemo. This isn't like Keith said, this isn't like I'm 60 and I don't want to walk to the other side of the lot.
I still would like us to have it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, thank you. I bet Kay is wondering what I'm gonna say. I get what you were saying about the limited influence that council has of the school board, but if I could just put in a plug for three words: math, physics, and chemistry. I know alums or graduates that walk in the school had a lot of problems to hire it just because they didn't have sufficient courses, the decent courses. And I can tell you about one young lady who left Rock Island at just the right time. And in fact, her dad had been on the town council. That's Liliana Baru, and her dad was on the council. But we got this call early one morning several years ago from her, and she got the right courses she needed South Kingston, but they had that family had a week to get. But anyway, she called us and she says, Keith, she says, I've been accepted to a 5-year fully funded PhD program in medical physics. And that's because she left Rock Island in a negative time. Thank you.
For the record, I had access to great schools and I would never have been accepted into a 5-year fully funded PhD program in medical physics. Anything else before we move on to schedule? Lily, do you want, or is this your?
Oh, yes. Yeah, this is mine. Thanks. Okay, currently you have three meetings scheduled for the rest of the month. You have a December 16th at 12:30 with the lobbyists. The same date, the September 16th at 7 PM with the school committee, and that, as I mentioned earlier, will be here at Town Hall. We are wanting to schedule two more kind of training, education meetings. And I'm wondering about availability prior to the holidays, or if we're gonna be pushing out into January, but basically having one meeting with the department heads so they can just kind of give you an update on where, projects that they're working on. I also wanted to have probably at a separate meeting, just so it's not so overwhelming, but to just kind of have a general meeting about communication, town actions, communications, APRA, the access to public records, open meetings, all of those kinds of things are very good to get a refresher on. And for some that may be new to the process, there are also some new programs that we're using now for helping to navigate, particularly with access to public records. And clerk base, any of those kinds of things that we are using that we might want to give you a little bit of an extra heads up on.
So the first meeting you said on the 16th was at what time?
It's at 12:30.
12:30, and that's which one? Sorry.
That's with the lobbyists. They're coming over.
And the second is at 7 PM at school. Are they both here?
They're both here.
Okay.
Mhm. And then, the regular council meeting on the 18th at 7 PM.
And,
So
how would you like to do the, department heads? You want to do it during the day? Do you want to do it?
I think doing it during the day is best.
Yeah.
During their workday.
So what's the best weekday to do that? But you already have a date.
I don't. That's why I have this as an agenda item.
Sorry,
No, thank you.
Emily, with the department heads, what's the agenda to it? What is the?
You would probably just be receiving a report from each department head that was going to be talking about what, what their projects are, maybe what their goals are, so you can have just a full understanding of what's happening in the town. We can do it next week potentially, if that's sometimes available next week.
We don't have anything else scheduled.
Exactly. The 11th before 4 is open, the 12th before 4 is open.
11th is better for me.
Wednesday, the 11th, can we do a noon or 12:30 or?
I don't know, I'll be working, so I'm not sure I can make that, but I don't wanna hold the rest of the group up on it. I go to Zoom meeting or whatever it may be. And I don't need to partake, but to be able to get caught up on what happened with the meeting.
Okay, just by watching it.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't need, I understand.
okay. You want to do a 12:30 on the 11th, for the
Okay.
department heads?
Thursday, the end of it?
Or later,
Just.
Yeah,
You have to always be here.
So say Thursday, I'm committed to fire department stuff.
how about on the 18th? We have a meeting that night, would you be available earlier that day? Can you do it on that day?
Sure. The 12:30 on the 18th instead?
Sure.
Okay.
Is that better for you though?
yeah, so
Okay. So we're not doing the 11th.
you can 12:30.
12:30. We can do one. Amy prefers one.
Is one possible or 12:30 is better? It's an 11. It's an 11.
If you just ask that question.
I'm the last person, I'm the last person you want to ask. I am the last person you want to ask.
Stab a little bit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, unless you want to miss it.
And this, you know, since you brought up the boat schedule, everyone's noticed that there are 2 boats on Tuesday. Nice.
They changed
Two votes is nice. Again, I'm gonna disagree with you.
This time of year?
It was fun.
This time of year, I know, still very poor, but
On the 16th, no, this, Monday the 16th, we have that evening, a meeting with the school committee.
Mhm.
And I will not be on.
so will you be on here after the 12:30 one?
Yes, depending on whether Bill can tell me. There's a.
I'll work around his schedule.
There's a late day.
I believe it's 6 o'clock on Wednesday.
So here's my challenge.
There's a 2:30 and a 6:30.
Oh, so I'll make the Tuesday. That's fine.
Yeah, I expect that they'll
I-
they'll obviously be going back on that boat as well.
May and Matt and their baby are coming from Australia and I gotta pick them up. That boat. So
Really, how long is the second meeting that you
as important as the meeting is. Let's go.
Yeah. I anticipate about an hour and a half.
You want to dovetail it all?
If you want to, we can just squeeze it all in and just kind of do like a 3-hour meeting, maybe 2-hour meeting, 2.5.
What day?
The same, we would just be having a longer meeting on the 18th, just to include the items that I wanted to cover.
That's fine as long as people are up for it.
Yeah.
Longer meeting at 12:30 or at 7?
12:30,
Okay.
I'm there.
the 18th,
18th, on the 18th.
the 18th, yeah, and I'll send out an Outlook.
And school committee.
That's going to be the department heads. Yeah, on the 18th. The 16th is the school committee.
So what's the law? Okay.
So the 18th, we're just going to add the items that I wanted to talk, the training that I wanted to talk to you about, just about the open meetings.
Yeah.
and-
Oh,
terrific
okay.
one.
Yeah.
Great. Anything else? Coming to Mars? Got a motion to adjourn?
Did you want to talk about,
What?
Oh,
Interstate?
wait.
Oh, so just, we are coordinating with Interstate for a couple of days in January for the meeting with them. So we're waiting to hear back on those, but that'll be January.
So is that, so I'm just gonna say that every year that, even before I was on council, when I would come to that meeting, each year they come and they say, oh, sorry, it's too late for you to give any input about anything. Do it earlier next year. Are we there for this year, like schedule's done and like, why are we even bothering to meet with them? If the schedule is done and we can't offer any input, why would we even bother to meet with them?
I would suggest that if you have concerns, you could express them now. That would be incorporated in the subsequent calendar year. You know, if you hold them inside until next October or November, it may,
But I mean, I've had
it may
my-
be again.
Right, because I've had people ask me, when are you doing that meeting? I want to go to that meeting. I have things to say. And at this point, I'm like, well, don't even bother. Because like, you can't exert any influence over it. Like, why are we even bothering? Like, let's just schedule it for next year.
It's the council's purview. I mean, I would again suggest that. If there are preferences that need to be expressed, it may take time for them to be implemented, if at all, but if you never say them out loud, they'll never hear them. So.
And the meeting also covers more than just schedule. There are other issues that have gone on in the past that has been doing this.
There's a motion to adjourn and what's been seconded. All in favor, you guys say aye.
I just wanted to point out 2 things. One, it was, is it Elsie? Elsie Stanley? I don't know which word the other day, Elsie Stanley, who did all of our plat maps and plat maps, all the entire state of Rhode Island practically. He was in his late eighties, did a fabulous job back when that
Yeah.
needed to be done, and I want to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And two, you all got a copy of the order from the department, the division of PUC, knocking out the fast ferry from,
Yes.
Charlie Denario after 11 years. So.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
I
Opposed, no, the ayes have it. Paul, get out there and